The worst kept secret in the MCU and on Disney Plus and Daredevil Born Again is that Jon Bernthal would reprise his role as the Punisher, Frank Castle, for this series. People have been talking about this even before they revamped the damn thing. And now we finally have visual evidence, not only that Jon Bernthal will in fact be reprising his role, but also one of the aspects of what the story in Daredevil Born Again is going to be about. It's going to be something directly out of the Punisher series that wasn't very impactful the very first time, and I think it'll probably be rejected even harder this next go around. But let's get to these deets and the photos that we do have. Photos and video from the set of the upcoming Disney Plus Daredevil Born Again show Jon Bernthal's Punisher alongside Charlie Cox's Daredevil amid a storm of bullets. The news that Bernthal is back as the Punisher has been suspected since last year when The Hollywood Reporter said that the character was being brought back into the MCU, but that was before the show was given a massive overhaul and a new set of writers in late 2023. Amid an effort by Marvel to improve the overall quality of their television offerings, neither Marvel nor Disney have confirmed Bernthal's involvement in Daredevil Born Again, despite the mounting evidence that he is reprising his role from the Netflix series. I guess Bob Iger and Kevin Feige are doing the Tony Khan route, where everyone knows that CM Punk is going to be debuting in Chicago, where everyone knows that Sasha Banks, whatever her name is now, is debuting in Boston, but they don't actually ever confirm it. I don't think that this is helpful. I don't think it hurts either, because I guess everybody knows that Jon Bernthal's Punisher is going to be in Daredevil Born Again. I think a lot of people like his version of the Punisher. It's a really good one. I would say that it's not quite on the level of Ray Stevens back in the day. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But he did a Punisher sequel to the Thomas Jane film, I believe. And it's absolutely awesome. It's one of the most underrated, underappreciated comic book movies of all times. That one's a real barn burner. Certainly better than Dolph Lundgren. And I would say Jon Bernthal's version of Punisher is better than Thomas Jane's. And it's a good version of the character. There are a lot of good moments, especially in Daredevil Season 2. I'm not as enthralled with Punisher in Daredevil Season 3 or even the Punisher show itself, but I thought his inclusion in Daredevil Season 2 was absolutely lights out. Really got the divide between Daredevil and Punisher, what makes them different, and why Punisher would like to believe that he and Daredevil are the same, but Daredevil knows for a fact that is not the case because Punisher goes too far. He steps over lines that Daredevil never would, especially in the comic books. Certainly, Daredevil in the show on Netflix was a little bit more gritty. I did see him torture people. He did throw a guy off a building. Now, he did live, but he did use it as a form of getting information and stuff like that. So the Charlie Cox Daredevil from the Netflix series does go a little bit further than we're used to seeing Daredevil do, which I thought was an interesting choice, and I think it really worked. I don't think we're going to be seeing anything like that on the Disney Plus version of Daredevil Born Again. I think they're going to make that character a lot closer to PG than he would be to rated R or whatever that is. But it is a good move. People like the character. They want Daredevil Born Again to be a success. And they're putting a lot of effort into it, which is really smart because people like the Daredevil show from Netflix, and bringing all the actors back is good business. It's a smart move, and I wish they would just include it into the canon and make it all kind of happen. But what they did to Kingpin and Hawkeye was a little bit embarrassing, where he was taken out pretty easily. But incorporating these characters, smart move. Love Bernthal's portrayal of Frank Castle. Really, really good stuff. Very, very hard hitting. And he in the prison during that riot was absolutely awesome. Now, what might they be doing with this character? If you've never read the comic books, I think you might be disappointed. If you've read the comic books, and when I tell you, you're going to be rolling your eyes and saying this thing again. To this end, a new set of leaked photos depicting actor Jeremy Earl in character as police officer Cole North wearing a Punisher logo spray painted on his tactical gear. Notably, North's fashion choice appears to confirm a previous rumor that suggested Daredevil Born Again would see Disney bring to life the Punisher comic book storyline, wherein Frank confronts and lambasts police officers who are fans of his work. In 2017's The Punisher Volume 12, written by Becky Cloonan, a scene occurs in which Frank, after finding that a number of cops are looking up to him as a heroic symbol, rips a Punisher sticker off a squad card before chastising the officers for their fanaticism, stating, "I'll only say this once. We're not the same. You took an oath to uphold the law. You help people. I gave that up a long time ago. You don't do what I do. Nobody does. You boys need a role model? His name is Captain America, and he'd be happy to have you," which I do think is all fine and dandy. And obviously, they wanted to get that out there, that they were not happy that police officers, especially, and I think they're not happy about military personnel using the Punisher logo as a representative of camaraderie or your unit cohesiveness and stuff like that. So Becky Cloonan, one of the worst writers in comic books, decided to include it in a Punisher series. And guess what? It didn't really work then. It doesn't really make sense for the character Punisher. While the Punisher is certainly aware of justice and he's aware of his surroundings and what his mission is, he is almost solely focused on his mission. I don't think he really cares about much else. I don't think he's socially conscious. I don't think that's who Frank Castle is. I don't think Frank Castle would give a damn if people were out there using his logo as a means of creating morale or showing unit cohesion. Why would he care about that? It's not really something that would be in the purview of Punisher. Now, if you did have police officers out there deciding, well, as a police officer, I can't kill this man, but I'm going to dress up as the Punisher and then go exact justice that way, you know, bypassing the legal system and all that stuff, and then like be a copycat Punisher, Punisher would lose his mind and would kill you for that. But that's not really what these guys are doing. That's not really what they were doing in the comic books. But this was just kind of thrown into the comic books because Marvel, quite frankly, were getting tired of the boys in blue and our men and women fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq using the Punisher symbol. The Punisher symbol is awesome. It's really, really cool. You know, when I was deployed in Afghanistan, we had a coin minted and made for our little unit that we handed out to people that we worked with that did a good job and stuff, to let them know that we appreciated all that stuff. And guess what? There's a Punisher logo on it. And there were a lot of Punisher logos on a lot of coins and vehicles and all that kind of stuff. And I think Marvel have been just desperate to get away from this. That's why they had all of a sudden, they changed the logo and he had a sword. And next thing you know, they just kill off Frank Castle and send him to another dimension. And they try to replace him with Joe Garrison. Shockingly, that series didn't quite work with fans. Fans of the Punisher didn't care about Joe Garrison. And it was basically just deleted after 4 issues. And I don't know that we'll ever see the character again. I mean, probably, but nobody really cares. People care about Frank Castle. They're attached to the character. He has a really good backstory. He's a man out of a mission. He's a different sort of hero. I don't really like to call him a superhero because he does kill quite a bit. Now, there are superheroes out there that do kill, but I think Punisher takes it to another level. Basically, he's Batman, you know, without the rules, without the vow and all that kind of stuff. So I can understand to a degree their point there, but it doesn't make sense for the character. And once you start doing things that don't make sense for the character, it always alienates the audience because it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like a story or a moment that makes sense for the character, and it's probably going to feel that way in the show as well. Even though John Bernthal plays a damn good Frank Castle, he's a really good actor. I've liked him in pretty much everything that he's done. I think the first time I really remember him, obviously, was The Walking Dead, where he played Shane or whatever, where he was a real psychopath. Just a really good, compelling actor that while he can do bad things, he does make you feel for him, which is what you kind of want. That's the vibe or the presence that you want for Frank Castle, Punisher, whether it's on the big screen or in TVs, and certainly within comic books as well, that you don't treat him like just any other villain, but you do also understand that you wouldn't want the police going to the lengths to exact justice that Punisher does, because he definitely oversteps the bounds of good judgment and lawful justice and all that stuff quite a bit. There are several people that have certainly contributed to the Punisher over the years. You know, you think of Jerry Conway might have created the character, but there have been other very influential writers, like Mike Baron comes to mind. Chuck Dixon definitely comes to mind, and he's somebody that's actually chimed in on what Marvel have been doing with the character for several years now, where they're really trying to distance the Punisher from the logo and all that kind of stuff. And this is what Chuck said on a couple of occasions. They have contempt for Punisher, this new crowd of editors. In addition to their contempt for Punisher, I think this current crop of editors also has a deep-seated dislike for the police and the military as well. They don't want to deal with them, and they don't like the idea that they use this symbol. And I think they don't quite understand why the police and military adopted the Punisher symbol. And I would definitely echo those sentiments. I don't think they realize why people are drawn to the Punisher symbol and why maybe you would want the Punisher symbol on your up-armored vehicle in Iraq rather than the Captain America logo. There's lots of stars everywhere, especially when you're in the military, and I imagine there's lots of stars in the police or whatever. And it's a good looking logo. There's nothing wrong with the Captain America shield or the Captain America star and all that stuff. But the fucking Punisher logo is badass. It makes a statement that you're there for business and, you know, there for a good, what was that, 17 years? We were in Iraq and Afghanistan, something like that. Was it longer than that? And probably was longer than that. Maybe it was closer to 20. We were there for a very long time, and we were putting a lot of young men and women in harm's way. And guess what? They saw a lot of really disgusting things, really violent things. They had very dirty things done to them. And unfortunately, in the service of their country and what they were told to do, either they're on orders or whatever, by the purview of the government, the president and Congress and all that stuff, they probably had to do some pretty tough things. And, you know, the Punisher logo makes a statement. It's something that you can put on there and you can kind of understand once you see that and someone else is wearing it, maybe some of the stuff they went through. It's a symbol of camaraderie. It doesn't mean that you want to go out there and butcher people like the Punisher, especially if you're a police officer. I don't think police officers really think that way. Obviously, police officers and police work is completely different than military work, and what soldiers and airmen and Marines and sailors and even coasties are out there doing when they're in the battle space, when they're on the battlefield and all that kind of stuff. You know, and police officers also would like a symbol that says, hey, I'm within this brotherhood. It doesn't mean that you want to go out there and murder people like the Punisher, but I guess maybe it would be bad PR if your Punisher logo was on a police officer as he was doing something terrible, but that doesn't say anything about the Punisher. It says something about the police officer, and that's like an individual action, but they've decided to like paint everybody with a broad brush on that and not really understand why people adopted the symbol. It's not because they like Frank Castle. I would imagine at least 50% of the people using it, whether they're police officers or military, probably don't even know that it is Frank Castle or Punisher. Certainly have never read the comic books. They don't really know what the guy's all about. It's just a cool logo. And I think they continuously, you know, cut off their nose to spite their face because they don't realize what it means and why people have been drawn to it that are in the profession of arms, which is something that not a lot of people in America really do anymore. There was a time when military service was very, very normal among young men across America. It's very abnormal at this point, actually, the amount of people that actually serve in the military. So I think people have less of an appreciation and understanding of where these things are coming from. And certainly the editors, you know, the editors aren't going to have been people for the most part that were out in Iraq or Afghanistan, or maybe they were doing missions in Africa or some of those weird things that go on, you know, when you're in special forces and some of these weird task forces that are out there. And I just don't have an understanding or appreciation of just what bullshit a lot of people go through on behalf of all the freedoms of, you know, Americans across the country and stuff like that. So it's just a weird, broad over jump. So now they're going to include it into the TV show, and it's going to be an eye-rolling moment. Hopefully it's just like a little bitty part of an episode. If this thing spans 2 or 3 episodes, you know, people are going to turn on the show because it's bullshit. It's not Punisher, and no one really cares to that degree. At least as far as normies go, like, whatever, man, go use the Punisher logo. I don't really care. I appreciate the fact that you're going out there and putting yourself in harm's way, so I don't have to. That's a normal reaction to people. But for the most part, we aren't really dealing with a lot of normal people in Hollywood or comic books and stuff like that, unfortunately. If you would like more coverage of this and other comic book things, you know, comic books specifically, or movies, TV shows, all that kind of stuff, the geek sphere just in general, I do want to invite you to go check out the Thinking Critical Patreon, where we have tons of more content with your favorite guests, Doc, Aaron Sparrow, Jim from Weird Science, 32 Flavors, and Nick Weiser. Obviously, lots of me on there, and we do a lot of podcasts every single week. Lots of fun to have there. If you would like to support the channel, that is the best place to do it. There's a link in the video description.